Project 2, Graphic Symbols and Patterns. So we can start off this project by clicking on the Create New button. So, according to the delivery instructions, we want to create an Adobe Illustrator file with the name. So we'll use surname. My name is Bao _ 157 _ project _ 2. So we'll just let Adobe Illustrator assign the file extension depending on the file format we choose. So the file size will be 600 points by 600 points. So just make sure we've got points selected as our units, and then type in 600 and 600, 600 width, 600 height, and we already have that. One artboard will do. Why don't we create 4 artboards, since we're going to have the project asks for 4 different artboards. So I'll type in 4 here and then click Create. Right. So let's start with Artboard 1. So clicking on the Artboard tab to activate the Artboard palette, let's go to the first artboard. So I'm going to create a parallelogram pattern. So first, create 4 layers. Click on the Layers palette, and I could set the first layer to be Guides. Layer 1, double click on the name, and then type in Guides. I kind of like my guides to be green, so I'm going to change the color to green by double clicking on the layer and then choosing from the drop-down menu for color. Click OK. Great. I'm not sure if I'm going to be using those guides, but let's see where we go. So create 4 layers: color motif, black motif, color pattern, and black pattern. So you just have to click on the Create New Layer icon at the bottom of the Layers palette. So you can either click and then double click into the name. So the first one's going to be black motif layer. And another one, if I click on the Option key, when I click on the Create New Layer, it automatically launches the Layer Options dialog box. So I can type in color motif and then enter. So I'm going to change that to blue. Next is color pattern and black pattern. So we'll start with black pattern. And then option click again for the color pattern. So we have our 4 layers. On the black motif layer, define a pattern to fit inside a 100 point wide and 100 point high square. Then define the pattern. So I've given you examples in the project sheet showing a black pattern and a color pattern. So what I'm going to do is create those initial shapes. So first of all, I'm going to go to the Artboard, Artboard 1, and then Command 0 to center that artboard on the page. Then I'm going to select the rectangle tool. So the first thing I can do is, well, what I can see is this pattern is made up of parallelograms. So I can very easily recreate this pattern by first creating a rectangle. So I know that this pattern is going to be 100 points by 100 points. So the rectangle I'm going to create is 25 by 50, or 50 by 25 depending on what orientation the rectangle is. So first I'll just click anywhere. Well, why don't we start with creating our pattern shape. So going back to the layers palette, I'm going to click on guides and then create our first square. So just so I've got the right colors when I create my object, I'm going to click on fill and select none, and then click on stroke. Black should be fine for what we're doing here. We're actually going to be creating guides, so it doesn't really matter what color we're using. So I'm just going to option click right in the center of the document or the artboard, and the rectangle will be 100 by 100. So type in 100, tab 100, and then click OK. Great. So if I want that rectangle to be exactly in the center, I can change my x and y coordinates. So the x would be 300, half of 600, and the y would be 300. So now it's positioned exactly in the middle, and I can go to the View menu and then navigate down to the Guides submenu and then click on Make Guides, which as you can see is Command 5. So that changes that rectangle into a set of guides that are on the Guides layer. If I open it up, there's our rectangle. Great. So inside that rectangle, I'm going to create a pattern using the rectangle tool. So if I click on the black pattern layer, now I can start drawing. So using the rectangle tool, I'm going to position my rectangle in the upper corner of the square that we just created. So click, and then this is going to be 50 points across and 25 points high. And then enter, or click OK. So I want this rectangle to have a stroke of none and a fill of black. So I just need to click on the Swap Fill and Stroke icon here. Great. So at this point, I can do a couple of things. I could either use the Shear tool, or I could just move one of the lines. In this case, I'm going to use the Shear tool. Option click on the other side, and now type in -45 and then OK. And now I've got the angle that I was looking for. So now I can use the Move tool, Shift Command M will bring up the Move dialog box, and I can move this object 25 points down. So type in 0 or tab if it's already 0 for horizontal, and then type in 25 for the vertical dimension, and then click on OK. Great. So the easiest thing to do right now to properly rotate this parallelogram around a center point would be to create the center point. So with the rectangle tool, I should be able to click in the center of the document and then type in 25 wide, and 25 high. Okay, so that gives us a square. Using the direct selection tool, I'm going to make sure that the upper right-hand corner of the object is exactly aligned with the center of the artboard. So that's going to give us a center point. So Command Y to change to the outline view mode. So you can see that under the view menu, you can change to preview or to outline mode. And that Command Y just toggles between those two. So there's my center point that I'm going to use for the rotation point. So to do that, I will deselect by clicking anywhere else on the artboard, and then by option clicking on the parallelogram, I've selected all of the points in this object. Next, take the rotate tool and then positioning the cursor right over top of the center point of the square that we just created, use the option key, pressing the option key down, and then click. Then that should bring up the rotate dialog box. Type in 90 for the angle, and then copy. Now Command D, and that will be duplicated twice. Great. So the only thing missing now is the missing pieces on either side of this square. So there's a missing piece over here. I'm going to switch to preview mode again, Command Y. And we don't need this square in the center anymore, so I'm going to option click on the center and then delete it. So for this bottom parallelogram, if I use the direct selection tool and then option click on the object, now I can take that bottom anchor point and then option click and then drag up until, well, it's not snapping to a point. So I actually want to position this really accurately. I can do that either one of two ways. Either let go here and then using the control bar transform tools, I can change the Y coordinate to exactly 200. And then I know that object is placed exactly where I want it to be. The other way we could do this, let's try it with the horizontal parallelogram. I could just select the move tool, shift command M, and then move the object 100 points across and 0 in the vertical orientation. So then click on copy, and that gives us the exact position that we want for the other piece. So there's our object. So we could do a couple things here. We already know where our 100 point by 100 point square is. We have turned it into a guide. We could actually click to deselect anything on our artboard, and then Command Option semicolon will release the guide that we have just created. Option click on it, and now I can copy that square,